Welcome to the Financial Flossing Podcast with Ross Brannan, guiding dental professionals to a brighter future. Ross Brannan is a financial advisor who knows it's not just about your teeth. He helps dental practice owners protect and maximize today's cash flow to plan for tomorrow's cash needs. Find him at rossbrannan.com. On the show, he brings together experts to help dental professionals looking to make smart money decisions to grow their income, turn their retirement goals into reality, and improve their lives. And now, here's your host, Ross Brannan.
Welcome to the show. Today we have Robert Spiel and Bryton Nield of Dentist Partner Pros. Dentist Partner Pros specializes in creating thriving dental partnerships, associateships, and teams. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for inviting us.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, for sure. So tell me a little bit about what Dentist Partner Pros does, because it's really unique and I've never heard of anything like it. I think it provides a valuable service to the market out there. So what do you guys do?
In a nutshell, Ross, there are two things we do. We prevent dental divorces and we create dental marriages.
Are dental divorces as expensive as regular divorces?
Even more so.
Yikes.
They're uglier. They involve more people. The consequence is far more difficult for everyone involved. And a real divorce is like horrible. But a dental divorce, when partners actually split their ways and go two different directions, it divides loyalties among the team, among the patients. It really is a lose-lose with a capital L on both sides.
And what we're talking is, you and I, Bob, are partners in a practice, and then we just, for whatever reason, get into a cat fight, can't get along, and we break up, which probably takes a lot of bad things happening to go that far. And that means I'm like, all right, I'm leaving. I'm going to start my own practice somewhere else. Now, I'm probably going to try and take all the patients. I'll probably get at least half. I'm probably going to try and take all the staff, probably get at least half. And so it sounds like it's a disaster all the way around.
It is. Yeah. It may not be as bad as what happened last month, where a pair of partners down in Florida who owned an auto shop together literally killed each other.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. This is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard, but they both brought guns to this meeting. And one shot one and the other shot the other guy. The second partner died in his car 20 minutes after he left the scene. I mean, that's as bad as it gets. Okay. But typically what we find happens in it, the strangest thing is, you may think it takes a long time for this to occur, but it's the small wedge that gets stuck into a tree, forgotten. The tree grows around it, but then some stressor occurs and it breaks it apart. And it's almost always about money or about division of responsibilities. And as you know, dentists aren't the greatest typically at being able to discuss conflict. They try to avoid it almost at all cost. And then it just starts to pile on and pile on and pile on. So our approach is, number one, to try to prevent that from happening. Okay, by catching those partnerships that are in a state of flux, but they still want to make it work. But even more importantly, perhaps setting things up properly to start with. And that's the other part of what we do, is finding great dental associates that will then become a contributing part of this professional partnership to eventually become business partners, and then teach them how to actually work through conflict, create healthy debate, discuss issues, think like a business, and thrive. And it's a blast. We love it.
We've outlined the problem, and you kind of started teasing it a little bit right there. So talk about how because I can go on numerous websites and try and find an associate. And that associate, we might have a phone call and like, oh, everything's great. Here, come work over here, fly cross country, move your family or you across country, and let's just set up shop. Well, you don't know if it's going to work out or not. So talk about how you practically get this to work in everything that you guys do.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, if you go on the ADA's job board site right now, you'll see 842 postings for associate dentists across the country. So obviously there's a massive need for people looking for finding the right associate dentist. There needs to be people that want to come and build more practices. But the question is, how do you form and pick the right one? And how do you make sure that that is set up so that it's not just a one and done or a trial period where they show up for a year or two and then they bounce and move on, where they open a competing practice or they move on to a different practice. So we're in the business of forming the dental marriage. And the way that we do that is it first starts with that paradigm shift of saying, we're not coming into this to just find another employee for the practice. We're coming in to help bring on a new clinical partner that will lead, hopefully, to an actual partner in the practice. And when you have that slight shift of paradigm, it makes you approach things differently. So we found a few really key points in order for a partnership to start off like on the right foot. They need to be aligned both in money, how they view money, their relationship with money. Do you have someone that's an ultra spender that likes to buy every new gadget, toy, and a piece of equipment out there? And do you have someone that is a lot more thrifty, likes to make the things last longer, and doesn't need the newest stuff? You put those two people in a room and ask them to make a decision on buying a new piece of equipment, it'll be horrible. So anyways, being aligned in money, being aligned in values, as far as what's the most important to us? Is it patient, employee care? Just in general, what are the values there? Third would be being able to trust each other's dentistry and being aligned in the way that we practice dentistry. If you have someone that's ultra conservative, you could say even more holistic, and then you bring in someone that's completely focused on endo and surgery all day, the two will never be able to trust each other. And so you have those three things to start with. You got to make sure you start off with aligning in that way. But something that we do to take it even further is coming up with what we call the ideal characteristic list of a candidate. So basically creating our ideal candidate. And Bob, do you want to talk a little bit more about what that process actually looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. What we do, Ross, we found that the whole issue within the industry is that we view associate relationships and frankly partnerships as being business relationships. And honestly, they're the closest thing to a marriage besides the real thing, because unlike really any other executive level of relationship in business, dentists are in each other's sandbox all day long. And because of that, the opportunity for molehills to turn into mountains is huge. Conversely, if you can find somebody who gets the culture and fits well and, aligns the way Bryton described, the cool thing is that you can see this partnership just blossom and become a really, Stephen Covey used the phrase synergy. This synergistic relationship of just being able to do a lot of great things together. And by the way, one partner can leave and go on vacation. The practice doesn't have to shut down.
So it's instead of 1 and 1 equals 2, it's 1 and 1 equals 3. So
correct. Exactly. That's correct.
What do you do to vet them on the front end to make sure that you have the right person?
Great question.
Because a lot of people are like, oh, that sounds great, but how do you do it?
Yeah.
Right. So to answer your question, Bryton's question, what we do is first we vet the practice. And we're trying to determine, does this practice have what we call a practice within the practice? Okay.
Because I think I've been doing before, this. Some people think they need associates and they don't. They just need to be more efficient or they need to do something different.
Exactly. Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. They're busier than they've ever been. They wonder where their life is. And yet the reality is they're not ready for an associate. What they're really ready for is they've hit a plateau and they need some dental consulting help to figure out how to do more in less time with less stress. Okay. A practice within a practice has certain earmarks.
What percentage of people who think they need an associate actually need an associate?
Probably about 50%.
I would agree.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that's one of the reasons why we've got two numbers and maybe to frame why do we exist? We exist to fight two numbers, 50% and 75%. 50% is the rate with which dental partnerships end after 5 years. Half of them after 5 years dissolve. Okay. 75% is the number of associateships that fail after 1 year.
Whoa.
So as an industry, we suck at this. Okay. If we had that failure rate with implants, there would be such this outcry among the dental community and dentists to say, fix this problem. But because these costs are unknown and unknowable, but they're huge, we figured it's $250,000 every time an associate relationship fails.
No, that's
and the cost of a dental divorce is over $1 million.
Well, that's a good point. I think the corporate world does a really good job of knowing the cost of hiring somebody, but I don't think the average small business owner, which is what a dental practice is,
that's correct,
really understands the cost of hiring somebody. And you're saying that it's upwards of $250,000.
If it goes wrong. Yeah, in terms of opportunity cost, lost reputation, having to do it again, lost production, all of these elements. And all they know is that they just spent a whole lot of money potentially to find this person. But the biggest thing is the emotional cost, because you feel like you just got run over. And then you think, gee, do I really want to do this again if you're the senior owner doctor? And the answer part of the time is heck no, I don't want to do this. And then again, your practice plateaus. But to go back, how do we vet? We vet the practice to know, do they have a practice in the practice? And there's certain telltale things we're looking at to see, is this practice at a point where you could bring somebody on, have the senior doctor take a little haircut, but it is on a growth curve where it can continue to succeed. Once we vet the practice, then we go on site, interview all the team members, look at the culture, and create what we call an avatar of the ideal client or ideal candidate, forgive me. That's what we interview, survey, interview, reference check against, are those characteristics. And we used a certain interviewing style to really determine if this person meets. So we kiss a lot of frogs before we find a prince. But the thing is, Ross, it allows us to now say that for the past 10 years, we've had a 90% success rate at placing associates.
So basically, I call you, I'm a dentist, I need an associate, I think I do. You look under the hood in my practice, and you're like, well, actually, you don't need that. You just need to be more efficient at A, B, and C. And you're like, okay, thanks.
Right.
Or
Sure.
I do need that. And then you kind of get a feel, you start taking a deeper dive, getting to learn more about me.
Mm-hmm.
And you start figuring out, okay, who am I? What am I all about? What are my values? Okay, I live in XYZ.
How about my team, my culture, what's my practice, what type of person's going to fit here? Exactly.
All right, so then you go out to the market, find aspiring associates, start interviewing them until you find a few candidates that might be a match. And then do you bring 2 or 3 candidates to me, or do you just find one and bring one to me?
Ideally, in every world, we'd have a few to pick from, 2, 3 that get to that point. Sometimes, depending on the practice, whether it's a very rural or a specialized practice, sometimes you go through that entire process and you have one person. But through our model, we're able to actually quantify and say this person is a 90%, 95% fit for who we created as our avatar. That gives us a lot of confidence after several thorough interviews, reference checks, talking with, whether it's a dental student or coming out of residency, or they just recently had graduated, whatever it may be, checking with their clinical directors, someone that could speak to their work. We do our best to verify all of those things. Once we've gone through all of those stages and we say, okay, here's this person that we created in a lab, if you will. Here's our ideal avatar. We went and found them. Here's a 90% fit for what we were looking for. And then we actually help, let's say, we present them, we show up at the practice, we actually walk them through a day of meeting the entire team, making sure that the associate and the doctor are being able to have the conversations that they should be having. One of our clients, he said it best. I think he didn't even realize what questions he needed to be asking. He didn't know what he didn't know. And so when you have someone like us come in and be able to actually help know what questions should be asked, what questions are we not asking that we should be, it really helps, especially when we start to form associate agreements and contracts and setting that relationship up for success to begin with. And so our middle phase, so that first phase as far as identifying and going recruiting and vetting, we call that our matchmaker phase.
And how long does that phase take?
It really is relative to the practice. It can take as quick as 3 months. Sometimes it can take upwards of 6 to 9 months. Just depends.
Wow.
When you're trying to find the right fit, lots of times it's better to find the right fit than the fast fit. And we do our best to find that as quick as we can. But the reality is sometimes it takes some time. So, but once we do find that person, we actually act as priests, if you will, to help form the marriage by actually negotiating on behalf of both parties and writing the associate agreements, letters of intent, and making sure that both parties have a contract and agreement that is win-win and is going to set the relationship up for success moving forward. Then we stay engaged for the next 12 months as what we call marriage counselors to make sure that none of those molehills that are going to come up turn into mountains. We help facilitate conversations, communication, mentorship, along with actually training the team and the staff on how to get the new doctor busy, because maybe it's an experience they've never had before. So we have some best practices that we coach and teach the practice on what to do to make sure that this person doesn't just get there and twiddles their thumbs all day, but we get them busy as fast as we can. So
how did this whole idea come to fruition? I mean, what was the catalyst to make Dentist Partner Pros happen?
Great question. I think the catalyst for us is twofold. One is leadership is our passion. And as goes the partnership, so goes the practice. Just like in a marriage, as goes the husband and wife, so goes the family. And so we've seen the difference really great leadership makes in a practice, but also in the lives of the dentists. Okay, because, when we launched this, one of our values was that we want to make a difference in the lives of dentists, to be able to take away stress, to make their jobs easier. And it was literally a phone call that happened some 12 years ago with a dear friend of mine, Linda Miles, who, as I started consulting in dentistry, having consulted and worked in medicine. And she told me one day on the phone that we've got a 75% failure rate for placing associates in dentistry. And she'd been in the industry 35 years. And I just, Linda, you know why? And she said, no, nobody knows why. And I've hired probably 1,000 people in my career and other lives and started thinking, man, you don't even have this problem in medicine. Why do you have it in dentistry? And peeling it apart a little bit more, realized this whole idea that they're in each other's sandbox all day long. Even medical doctors do not interact the way dentists do. And so then the thought was, well, wait, this is like a marriage. This is not a business relationship. This is not a standard partnership. This is something where they have to be totally in alignment with each other, or things start to fracture. And then took this whole idea and said, okay, if it's a marriage, how do we approach it? Well, we've got to be matchmakers first. Have to be super intentional with who is going to fit in this relationship. We've already got an established dentist. Who's going to fit with that established dentist and team? And then once we find that person, how do we set them up for success instead of just handing them a contract and saying, here, catch? It's really, how can we make a win-win so that we start with the footing of, you know what, we are invested in you for the long term and you're invested in us for the long term. And then just knowing that little things can happen early in a marriage, just like, we had a conversation with this yesterday about toilet paper, over or under, toothpaste. Do you squeeze from the bottom or the middle? That happens in a dental relationship too. I remember a year ago having a conversation with a client that I had just placed an associate with. The guy was phenomenal. He was knocking it out of the park, but he didn't cut a crown the same way the senior doctor did. And he was all upset about it. And I just said, Mike, it's okay. Our job is to set him up for success, not to try to criticize him because he isn't a carbon copy of you. And that's one of the difficulties, Ross, that we find with senior doctors is that they've been in the game so long, they think the only way to win is to do it exactly the same way I do. And so we try to divorce them from that limiting belief and have them realize, listen, if they get the same results and they do it a different way, that's okay. So part of our clinical mentoring is to actually set up formal and informal opportunities for both doctors to share cases, talk about outcomes, and learn from each other.
That's so good.
The coolest thing is to see what happens to the senior doctor when he finally feels like, or she feels like, they've got somebody they can trust.
So how many people recognize they need help in this type of thing?
A lot recognize they need help. of those, how many are willing to invest? That's another question. Okay.
Well, that's a good point. So, all right. So you cost X amount of dollars. Well, golly, I don't want to spend that much money. I'm cheap. I can do this on my own. I'll go find.
I can do this myself. That's exactly right. Yeah.
I'll do it. And, maybe I can, but maybe I don't get a perfect fit. Maybe I get an okay fit. Maybe it doesn't divorce at the end of 1 year. Maybe divorce into 3 years. But of course, as the old saying goes, you get what you pay for. So what's your experience with dealing with people who aren't willing to pay?
It's a good question.
They end up in this cycle. They're part of the 75% unless they get lucky.
Typically, They come to us 2 or 3 failed associateships later.
Golly.
So typically, They come to us 2 to 3 failed associateships later, where they went and they tried it. Maybe they even tried it again. And when you start to calculate that, that means they would have spent $500,000, $750,000 in opportunity cost lost.
And real cost. Yeah.
And real costs. And the reality is you could invest some now and see it's not 1,000%, 100% going to work every single time, but 90% is pretty good.
It's a pretty strong number.
It's a pretty strong number. But the reality is, they go, they try, they do it themselves. And it used to be easier than it even is now. We're seeing there's more demand for younger dentists or associateships.
As the baby boomers are retiring and the DSOs are ramping, so the demand has gone up.
But there's less supply, meaning there's less dentists coming into the marketplace.
Well, and the other thing is like a lot of people are going to come in, they're going to put their 2 years in as an associate, then they're going to go start their own gig.
Possibly.
And that's almost as bad as it just not working out. Because from the eyes of the senior doctor, they will view that as not working out, even if the guy was great and it wasn't a bad split, but then they got to go find somebody again.
Correct.
So you guys talk about transition strategies, about associates buying in, stuff like that as well?
Absolutely. That's the goal. Our goal is to create partnerships in the end with a bought-in associate who is then permanently a clinical and business partner. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. And we love it. We're just super passionate about this because, we've seen the difference it makes. I mean, one client in Minnesota, for instance, was in a very particular niche where he was super popular. His next new patient was 4 months away. He was booked himself out 5 months. Found the perfect person, although it was interesting that his pick was the wrong pick. But he had somebody else in the wings, and he said, I think maybe this guy would be the right person, but I don't think so. Lined him up, and he nailed every characteristic. And the guy produced $1 million in his first year, this associate.
Wow.
And lifted this practice to brand new levels. And the most exciting thing is a senior doctor is now hiring a second associate, but he's got his life back.
And that first one is on partnership track.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
yep.
Wow.
It's a win-win for everyone when it's done right. When it's done wrong, it's a mess. It's a lose-lose. But the ideal person is a doctor that's been grinding away. They find themselves on a Thursday, Friday afternoon, evening, looking at themselves in the mirror saying, I can't keep doing this. I'm exhausted. I'm burnt out, but I got to do it for another 15 years. And what else am I going to do? I can't tell you how fulfilling and exciting it is when we finally get that doctor feels enough pain to pull the trigger and invest in bringing on a partner, and they take their first vacation in 10 years. They get to go home and spend time with their kids and their family for the first time in who knows how long. And that right there, I think, is why we do what we do, is to really help these people have better lives, less stress, and just overall better work-life balance. And it's more possible if you have a right partner in place that can kind of fill your shoes and have your back. So
how do people get in touch with you if they're like, this is a great idea, I failed already, or I don't want to fail? How do they get in touch with you?
Yeah, the easiest would be to just go to our website, dentistpartnerpros.com. If that's too difficult, you can email us. My email is Bryton. That's BRYTON @dentistpartnerpros.com. And if that's still too hard, you can text us at 208-220-5015. So all those are options. If somebody needs help, they can reach out through any of those ways.
So are there any questions I didn't ask that I should have asked, or any points that you didn't have a chance to make that you really want to hammer home?
The greatest thing that can happen to a private practice, in our opinion, is to have that senior doctor know that he or she has a succession plan, and to know that they are not doing it alone.
Well, it's too many of them now. Their succession plan is more succession hope on a DSO.
Correct.
Exactly. Yeah. And candidly, that's a concern of ours, because we feel like the DSO model is the wrong model for dentistry. We could spend an hour talking about that. But yeah, they think that that's their Hail Mary is, okay, I'm gonna grind this out and then sell to a DSO. And that's no way to live. Plus, selling to a DSO is actually kind of like a Ponzi scheme. And there are a lot of promises and a lot of things that they say that don't end up happening the right way. And
in the whole,
what
I call the rainbows and unicorns roll-up number they talk about on the recap number.
Exactly. That's right.
That number that's out there eventually.
Yeah.
Somehow.
Yeah.
You're selling for 5, but it's really going to be 35 after we have this,
Exactly. That's right. Yeah. Wouldn't you rather decrease your stress now and mentor somebody and preserve private practice and keep dentistry patient focused?
Yeah, that's good.
That's our goal. Okay.
So dentalpartnerpros.com, right?
Dentist.
Yeah.
See, we tried to find dental partner, but somebody else, but dentist, singular, partner, singular, pros, plural. Dentist, partner, pros.com.
Well, you should probably buy Dental Partner Pro and Dentist
it's on the to-do list.
All those domains, you should buy them all.
Sure. All those, yeah. We even thought about dentist partner bros.
Just in case.
Oh, yeah. So, this has been an enlightening conversation. I really appreciate your time today, guys.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ross.
We've loved it. You bet.
You've been listening to the Financial Flossing Podcast with Ross Brannon.
This has been another episode of Financial Flossing with Ross Brannon, guiding dental professionals to a brighter future. If you liked what you heard, consider subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. For more on Ross Brannon, visit rossbrannon.com.
This podcast is for informational purposes only. Guest speakers and their firms are not affiliated with or endorsed by Paz, Guardian, or North Florida Financial, and opinions stated are their own. External sites and materials are provided for your convenience in locating related information and services. Guardian and subsidiaries, agents, and employees expressly disclaim any responsibility for and do not maintain, control, recommend, or endorse third-party sites, organizations, products, or services. Make no representation as to the completeness, suitability, or quality thereof. Ross is a registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, Paz, OSJ, 3664 College Court, Tallahassee, Florida, 32311, 850-562-9075. Security products and advisory services offered through Paz. Member FINRA, SIPC. Financial representative, the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, New York. Paz is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. North Florida Financial is non-affiliate or subsidiary of Paz or Guardian. Arkansas Insurance License Number 161390032. California Insurance License Number 0L10073 2023-151096 expires 2/25.